Hello, symposiast. I'm Dr. Angela Puca, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. And on this specific occasion, it is about Hermeticism. So I'm going to give you a general overview of Hermeticism, some key themes in Hermeticism. I will explain the Corpus Hermeticum and some key figures in the spreading of Hermeticism, and as well as its impact on Western esotericism. So buckle up because it's going to be quite a journey. Hermeticism represents a diverse philosophical and esoteric tradition that has significantly influenced Western thought, particularly in the domains of mysticism, magic, and alchemy. Emerging from the intellectual environment of Hellenistic Egypt, it constitutes a synthesis of Greek philosophy, Egyptian religious concepts, and Near Eastern wisdom traditions. At its foundation, Hermeticism emphasizes divine knowledge, or gnosis, the interconnectedness of all existence, and the potential for spiritual elevation through wisdom and ritual practices. The tradition derives its name from Hermes Trismegistus, a legendary figure typically understood as a syncretic fusion of the Greek god Hermes, or Hermes as English speakers usually say, and the Egyptian deity Thoth, both associated with wisdom, writing, and mediation between divine and human realms. The primary texts of Hermeticism are preserved in the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of Greek philosophical dialogues composed between the 1st and 3rd century CE. The Asclepius, a Latin dialogue that survives complete, and fragments like the Emerald Tablets, which played an influential role in later alchemical traditions. These writings emerged during a period characterized by extensive cultural and religious interchange. Following Alexander the Great's conquest and the subsequent Ptolemaic rule in Egypt, the integration of Platonic and Stoic concepts with Egyptian religious ideas contributed to Hermeticism's distinctive character, wherein divine knowledge is conceptualized as an experiential and transformative process rather than solely an intellectual pursuit. Scholars have traditionally differentiated between philosophical Hermeticism and technical or practical Hermeticism. The philosophical component primarily addresses metaphysical inquiry, divine nature, and the human soul's relationship to the cosmos. In contrast, technical Hermeticism encompasses esoteric practices including alchemy, astrology, and theurgy, ritual techniques designed to invoke and engage with divine intelligences. While philosophical Hermeticism was substantially influenced by Neoplatonism, particularly in its articulation of a hierarchical cosmos emanating from the One, technical Hermeticism drew upon Egyptian priestly traditions that highlight ritual and symbolic transformation. But before we explore the cosmology in Hermeticism, I'd like to remind you that this project of delivering free academic scholarly knowledge based on peer-reviewed sources and scholarly analysis of primary sources can only exist thanks to your support. You are my fancy sponsor. You won't find other fancy sponsors over here. So if you have the means and want to support this project and keep it going, please consider supporting me via my Patreon community. I really love my Patreon community. That's also the best way to stay in contact with me because a lot of you guys send me messages and unfortunately I don't really have the time to reply to you all. But if you join my Patreon, even at the lowest tier, you will get into my Discord server and I will be able to reply to you there. Also, you will get access even at the lowest tier to a monthly Zoom call with myself and the rest of the community. And depending on your chosen tier, you can also have a different type of engagement with me, with sources, and with the community. So please check out my Patreon community. You can also support me on PayPal, Ko-fi, YouTube memberships, super thank me in the comments, and please also check out my services on my website, drangelapuca.com. You have courses. You can even commission a video on a topic that you like. So there's lots there. And sign up for my newsletter, still on my website. It's free and will get you access to a direct line of communication with me that bypasses social media capricious algorithms. So thank you very much for considering. And now back to the cosmology in Hermeticism. The Corpus Hermeticum presents a cosmology where the universe exists as a divine emanation, with all things originating from Nous, divine mind, and returning to it through spiritual refinement. The Hermetic path to enlightenment involves attaining gnosis, a form of direct intuitive knowledge transcending rational discourse. This differs from Christian salvation concepts as it depends not on faith in a deity, but on recognizing one's divine nature and reintegrating with the cosmic order. In this aspect, Hermeticism shares thematic elements with Gnosticism, particularly in depicting the material world as a realm of ignorance, though it generally lacks the radical dualistic rejection of materiality found in many Gnostic systems. The authorship question remains among the more complex aspects of Hermetic studies. Hermes Trismegistus was not a historical individual, but rather a legendary archetype representing the ideal sage transmitting divine wisdom. The association with Thoth further positions Hermes as a guardian of sacred knowledge, connecting him to Egyptian priestly, scribal, and theological traditions. Scholars suggest that attributing this text to Hermes Trismegistus constituted a deliberate strategy to confer antiquity and divine authority, a common practice in Hellenistic religious literature. The Hermetica thus belong to a broader category of pseudo-epigraphic works that established legitimacy by attributing their contents to venerated ancient figures. Beyond its philosophical and religious elements, Hermeticism significantly shaped subsequent Western esoteric traditions. The transmission of Hermetic ideas through Arabic translations during the medieval period influenced Islamic alchemy and philosophy, particularly works by figures such as Jabir ibn Hayyan and the corpus associated with him. During the Renaissance, Marsilio Ficino's rediscovery and Latin translation of the Corpus Hermeticum catalyzed a revival of Hermetic thought, which became deeply intertwined with Neoplatonism and Christian mysticism. This period witnessed renewed interest in the transformative aspects of Hermetic practice, particularly in alchemy and natural magic, exemplified in the works of Giordano Bruno, John Dee, and Hendrik Cornelius Agrippa. We'll talk about them more later. Despite declining as a mainstream intellectual tradition following the Enlightenment, particularly after Isaac Casaubon's 1614 demonstration that the Corpus Hermeticum dated to the early Christian era rather than ancient Egypt, Hermeticism has persisted in various forms. It influenced occult movements including Rosicrucianism, certain strands of Freemasonry, and later the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Recent scholarship examines how Hermetic principles inform contemporary spiritual movements, including aspects of New Age thought and digital esotericism, where the pursuit of hidden knowledge remains central. Hermeticism's endurance as a tradition stems from its adaptability. Rather than being confined to a specific religious or philosophical system, it functions as an interpretive framework applicable across diverse metaphysical and mystical discourses. Let's now turn to the contents of the Corpus Hermeticum. The Corpus Hermeticum, the most significant collection of philosophical Hermetic writings, consists of 17 Greek treatises attributed, as we said, to Hermes Trismegistus, though their actual authorship remains unknown. These texts show the influence of Middle Platonism and Stoicism, particularly in their conception of the cosmos as an ordered manifestation of divine intelligence, and the concept of sympathies and antipathies, the idea that certain things attract each other and other things repel each other. Central to this worldview is the idea that knowledge, gnosis, of the divine enables the soul's liberation from the constraints of material existence, a theme that parallels certain aspects of contemporaneous philosophical and religious movements, including strands of Gnosticism and Neoplatonism. However, unlike many Gnostic systems, which often view the material world as a prison created by a malevolent or ignorant demiurge, Hermeticism generally adopts a more optimistic view of the cosmos that highlights the possibility of divine union through intellectual and spiritual refinement while still acknowledging the challenges presented by material existence. This nuanced position regarding materiality and embodiment distinguishes Hermeticism from more radically dualistic systems, though significant variation exists within the Hermetic corpus itself. A defining characteristic of Hermeticism in antiquity was its engagement with the broader philosophical and religious discourse of the time. Neoplatonic philosophers such as Plotinus and Iamblichus were familiar with Hermetic concepts, though their direct engagement with specific Hermetic texts remains a matter of scholarly debate. Iamblichus, in particular, emphasized theurgical practices, ritual methods aimed at invoking divine presence, which show conceptual parallels to ritual techniques described in both the Hermetic literature and the Greek magical papyri, a collection of texts containing spells, invocations, and religious hymns from various Egyptian and Greco-Roman sources. The relationship between Hermeticism and early Christianity represents another important area of interaction. While the two traditions developed largely independently, they shared certain conceptual elements, including emphasis on divine revelation, salvation through knowledge, and cosmological speculation. Some early Christian thinkers, such as Clement of Alexandria and Lactantius, referenced Hermetic ideas in their writings, treating Hermes Trismegistus as a pagan prophet who had glimpsed aspects of divine truth. During the early medieval period, as much of the Greek Hermetic corpus became less accessible in Western Europe, Hermetic texts and concepts were preserved and developed within the Byzantine Empire and crucially transmitted to the Islamic world through translations into Arabic and Syriac. Texts such as the Kitab Sir al-Khalika, the Book of the Secret of Creation, also known as the Tabula Smeragdina or Hermetic tablet in its Latin form, and other works attributed to Hermes were studied by Islamic scholars who recognized Hermes Trismegistus as an ancient sage of divine wisdom. Islamic philosophers and alchemists, including Al-Kindi, the corpus associated with Jabir ibn Hayyan, and the Brethren of Purity, engaged with Hermetic concepts, integrating them into philosophical, alchemical, and cosmological frameworks informed by Aristotelian, Neoplatonic, and Islamic thought. This period marked a crucial phase in the preservation, transmission, and reinterpretation of Hermetic ideas, ensuring their eventual reintroduction to medieval and Renaissance Europe through translations from Arabic. The Renaissance witnessed a significant revival of interest in Hermeticism, catalyzed by the rediscovery and translation of the Corpus Hermeticum by the Italian scholar Marsilio Ficino. Commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici to translate ancient philosophical works, Ficino completed the first Latin translation of 14 treatises from the Corpus Hermeticum in 1463, which he titled Pimander, after the first treatise, and or De Potestate et Sapientia Dei, on the power and wisdom of God. Ficino and his contemporaries, based on information provided in late antique sources such as Lactantius and Augustine, believed this text to be the work of an ancient Egyptian sage who predated Moses, thus representing a primordial wisdom tradition that anticipated and paralleled Christianity. Ficino's interpretation of Hermeticism was deeply influenced by Neoplatonism and sought to harmonize Hermetic teachings with Christian theology, a syncretic approach further developed by figures such as Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, Hendrik Cornelius Agrippa, and Giordano Bruno. The Renaissance conception of Hermeticism often integrated it with other esoteric traditions, including Kabbalah, astrology, and natural magic, which created a comprehensive framework for understanding the cosmos and humanity's place within it. This Renaissance revival of Hermetic thought profoundly influenced European intellectual and historic traditions. It provided philosophical foundations for alchemical speculation, with Hermetic texts being interpreted as allegories of spiritual transformation as well as guides to material processes. Practitioners such as Paracelsus and his followers integrated Hermetic philosophy into their medical and alchemical theories, advocating for a holistic understanding of nature in which spiritual and material realms were fundamentally interconnected. The dissemination of Hermeticism also contributed to the development of esoteric societies, including the Rosicrucian movement in the early 17th century, which drew extensively on Hermetic and alchemical symbolism. The perceived antiquity and authority of Hermeticism faced a significant challenge in 1614, when the Protestant scholar Isaac Casaubon published a philological analysis of the Corpus Hermeticum as part of his critique of Cesare Baronio's Annales Ecclesiastici. Through careful linguistic analysis, Casaubon demonstrated that the texts were not the work of an ancient Egyptian sage, but rather products of the early Christian era, composed in the first few centuries CE. This philological dating significantly undermined the Renaissance narrative of Hermeticism as a prisca theologia. which means ancient or primordial theology, that predated and prefigured Christianity. Despite this critical reassessment, Hermetic ideas continued to influence intellectual and esoteric currents throughout the 17th and 18th century. Figures such as Robert Flood, John Dee, and Athanasius Kircher continued to engage with Hermetic concepts, often integrating them with emerging scientific paradigms. During the Enlightenment period, Hermeticism remained important within Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and other esoteric societies, though often in forms considerably transformed from their ancient and Renaissance predecessors. The 19th century witnessed new interpretations of Hermeticism within occult movements, most notably in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which synthesized Hermetic philosophy with elements from various esoteric traditions, including Kabbalah, tarot symbolism, and ceremonial magic. Figures such as Helena Blavatsky and subsequent theosophical writers incorporated Hermetic concepts into their universalist spiritual frameworks, though often with significant reinterpretations. Contemporary academic scholarship on Hermeticism has advanced significantly since the pioneering work of Francis C. Yates, whose influential studies, particularly Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic tradition, highlighted the importance of Hermetic thought in Renaissance intellectual history. Recent scholarship has both built upon and critically reassessed Yates' Hermetic paradigm, offering more nuanced understandings of how Hermetic texts and ideas were transmitted, interpreted, and applied across different historical contexts. Current research highlights the diversity within Hermetic traditions, the complex interplay between philosophical and technical Hermetica, and the need to situate Hermetic texts within their specific historical and cultural context, rather than treating Hermeticism as a monolithic tradition. Archaeological discoveries such as the Nag Hammadi library, which contains Hermetic texts alongside Gnostic writings, have provided new material for understanding the relationship between Hermeticism and other philosophical religious movements of late antiquity. Let's look at some of the core concepts in Hermetic philosophy. Hermetic philosophy presents a distinctive metaphysical framework that envisions the cosmos as an interconnected living system permeated with divine intelligence. The philosophical underpinnings of Hermeticism draw from multiple intellectual traditions, including Platonic, Stoic, and Egyptian religious thought, while maintaining its own unique characteristics. Unlike more doctrinaire religious systems, Hermeticism offers a relatively fluid approach to knowledge that prioritizes direct experience of divine wisdom, gnosis, over rigid dogma. Let's explore the core concepts that define Hermetic thought, including the nature of divinity, the human soul's role in the cosmic order, and the process of spiritual transformation. A foundational concept in Hermetic philosophy is the notion of an ultimate divine principle, often referred to as the One or God in the Hermetic texts. This concept bears similarities with the Neoplatonic idea of to hen, the absolute unity, and the Middle Platonic conception of a transcendent deity, though with distinctive Hermetic characteristics. In the Poimandres, this divine principle is described as both transcendent, beyond full human comprehension, and simultaneously immanent throughout creation. According to Corpus Hermeticum 1, divine nous, or mind, creates the cosmos through an act of self-revelation, generating a hierarchical universe in which material existence represents a manifestation of the divine order. This cosmogonic process differs significantly from creation narratives in the Abrahamic traditions. Rather than creating through divine fiat, the Hermetic deity generates the cosmos through a process of emanation and self-reflection. As Treatise 1115 of the Corpus Hermeticum states, God makes eternity, eternity makes the cosmos makes time, time makes becoming. This emanationist framework establishes a continuous ontological chain linking all levels of existence back to the divine source, without the sharp creator-creation distinction found in biblical traditions. Hermetic texts articulate a metaphysical framework in which nous, divine mind, and logos, divine word or reason, serve as cosmological principles mediating between absolute divinity and the material world. Nous represents the pure, unmediated intellect of the divine, while logos functions as the principle of divine articulation and ordering. This conceptualization shares elements with Stoic philosophy, which posited that logos functions as the rational ordering principle permeating the cosmos, though the Hermetic understanding integrates this with more distinctly Platonic elements, underscoring transcendence. Hermetic anthropology presents a complex view of human nature that integrates material, psychic, and intellectual dimensions. According to various Hermetic treatises, particularly Corpus Hermeticum 1 and 4, humans possess a dual nature. They are mortal in body but immortal in their essential humanity, which contains the divine element of nous. This anthropological model situates humanity in a unique position within the cosmos, connected to the material world through embodiment but capable of transcending it through the realization of their divine intellect. The Corpus Hermeticum describes the soul's cosmic journey in terms that suggest both Egyptian and Greek influences. In some treatises, particularly Corpus Hermeticum 1, the text describes how the human soul descends through planetary spheres, acquiring different qualities from each celestial realm before becoming embodied. However, through proper knowledge or gnosis and spiritual cultivation, the soul can ascend back through these spheres, shedding its material attachments and reclaiming its divine nature. Recent scholarship has emphasized that this pattern of descent and ascent in Hermetic texts should not be read as uniformly dualistic or anti-cosmic. While some treatises present a more negative view of embodiment, others exhibit a more integrated view of the material world as a manifestation of divine order. As Christian Ball notes, the Hermetic anthropology is characterized by its plasticity, allowing for diverse interpretations of humanity's relationship to materiality and divinity. A central principle in Hermetic philosophy is the doctrine of cosmic correspondence, famously expressed in the Emerald Tablet as that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to perform the miracles of the one thing. This principle, often simplified as above, so below, establishes a systematic relationship between different levels of reality, suggesting that patterns at one level of existence reflect those at other levels. This correspondence principle serves multiple functions within Hermetic thought. Epistemologically, it suggests that knowledge of higher realities can be attained through careful study of their reflections in the material world. Cosmologically, it establishes a harmonious relationship between celestial and terrestrial realms. Anthropologically, it positions humans as microcosms, reflecting the structure of the macrocosmic universe. The microcosm-macrocosm analogy became particularly influential in Renaissance Hermeticism and informed medical theories like those of Paracelsus, who viewed human beings as miniature reflections of the celestial order. However, scholars caution against anachronistically projecting Renaissance interpretations back onto ancient texts. The specific ways these correspondences were understood varied considerably across different historical and cultural contexts. Unlike certain Gnostic systems that often exhibit a strong dualism between spirit and matter, with the latter viewed as inherently evil or corrupting, Hermetic texts present a more nuanced and sometimes ambivalent view of material existence. While some Hermetic treatises highlight the limitations and challenges of embodiment, others, particularly the Asclepius, present a more integrated vision of nature as infused with divine presence and worthy of reverence. This ambivalence regarding materiality reflects the diverse intellectual currents that influence Hermetic thought. As van der Breck notes, the negative view of the material world that we find in some Hermetic treatises is clearly influenced by Platonic dualism, but is balanced by the more positive attitude characteristic of Stoic thought. This balanced perspective became particularly influential in Renaissance Hermeticism and contributed to the development of natural philosophy and magic as ways of engaging constructively with the material world through understanding its underlying principles. The Asclepius, in particular, articulates what scholars have termed a cosmic religion that shows the sacred nature of the cosmos itself. As Garth Fowden observes, the Asclepius presents a religion of the world, not of personal salvation from the world. This perspective contrasts with more otherworldly orientations in certain Hermetic treatises and really shows the tradition's internal diversity. The Hermetic path to knowledge constitutes not merely an intellectual exercise, but an experiential process that involves personal transformation. Across various Hermetic texts, this process is described using metaphors of awakening, rebirth, or regeneration. In Corpus Hermeticum 13, this transformative experience is depicted as a mystical rebirth wherein the initiate's 12 irrational tormentors, which are the negative qualities associated with the zodiac, are replaced by 10 divine powers, enabling direct knowledge of God. Gnosis in Hermetic tradition refers to a direct experiential knowledge of divine reality that transcends ordinary intellectual understanding. While it shares terminology with Gnostic traditions, Hermetic Gnosis typically lacks the radical cosmic dualism characteristic of many Gnostic systems. Instead, Hermetic Gnosis often involves recognizing the divine presence within the cosmos and oneself, leading to a transformation of consciousness rather than an escape from materiality as such. Recent scholarship has also highlighted that Hermetic texts present multiple paths to divine knowledge rather than a single uniform approach. Some treatises highlight intellectual contemplation, others visionary experience, and still others ritual practice. This diversity reflects the non-dogmatic nature of Hermetic tradition, which accommodated various approaches to spiritual development rather than prescribing a single orthodox method. Let's look at the practical dimensions now. While philosophical Hermeticism emphasizes intellectual contemplation and ethical cultivation, many Hermetic texts also reference ritual practice designed to facilitate communication with divine powers. These theurgic elements, from the Greek theurgia, divine work, involve the use of invocations, symbols, and ritual actions to establish contact with higher realities. Scholarly discussions of Hermetic theurgy have often focused on its relationship to Neoplatonic ritual practices, particularly those described by Iamblichus. However, recent scholarship suggests that Hermetic ritual practices likely drew from Egyptian temple traditions as well as Greek philosophical frameworks. Evidence for these practical dimensions appears not only in the philosophical Hermetica, but also in the Greek magical papyri and other technical Hermetic texts dealing with astrology, alchemy, and practical magic. The relationship between philosophical and practical dimensions of Hermeticism has been reassessed in recent scholarship. Rather than treating them as entirely separate traditions, scholars now recognize greater continuity between philosophical speculation and ritual practice in ancient Hermeticism. As Radek Klup argues, theoretical insights and practical applications were seen as complementary rather than opposed to each other. This integrated approach to theory and practice became particularly influential in Renaissance Hermeticism and informed developments in natural philosophy, medicine, and esoteric traditions. Hermetic ethics centers on the cultivation of virtues aligned with divine intellect rather than adherence to specific moral codes or commandments. As Corpus Hermeticum 12 states, piety is knowledge of God, and one who has recognized God, filled with all good things, has thoughts that are divine and not like those of the multitude. This emphasis on knowledge as the foundation of ethical life reflects the broader Hermetic understanding that proper conduct flows naturally from correct understanding of cosmic order. Several Hermetic treatises address ethical questions through discussions of vice, virtue, and proper orientation toward material existence. Corpus Hermeticum 6 contrasts the good associated with incorporeal eternal realities with worldly pleasure, which it describes as the foremost of evils. Yet, this ethical framework avoids strict asceticism, particularly in treatises like the Asclepius, which highlight more responsible engagement with the material world rather than withdrawal from it. The Hermetic ethical vision aims at what modern scholars have termed divinization, the process by which humans come to share in divine qualities through knowledge and virtue. This aspirational ethics differs from both rule-based moral systems and radically relativistic approaches, positioning human ethical development as part of a broader cosmic process of return to divine perfection. Through these core concepts, divine unity, cosmic emanation, soul's journey, correspondence principles, and transformative knowledge, Hermetic philosophy offers a distinctive worldview that bridges metaphysical speculation and practical wisdom. Its adaptability to different cultural and historical contexts has ensured its continuing relevance across diverse traditions, from Greco-Roman antiquity through medieval Islamic thought to Renaissance natural philosophy and contemporary esoteric movements. Now, let's turn to the influence of Hermeticism on Western esoteric traditions, which spans centuries and manifests in various philosophical, mystical, and magical currents that have shaped both religious and intellectual discourse. From its significant role in Renaissance thought to its presence in modern esoteric movements, Hermeticism has functioned as a complex bridge between antiquity and contemporary spirituality. So let's explore the legacy of Hermeticism now. We have already mentioned a bit about the Renaissance reception, but let's go a bit deeper into it. So, the translation of the Corpus Hermeticum by Marsilio Ficino in 1463 marked a pivotal moment in the Western reception of Hermeticism. At the request of Cosimo de' Medici, Ficino translated 14 treatises from the Corpus Hermeticum into Latin, titling his work Pimander, after the first treatise, or De Potestate et Sapientia Dei, on the power and wisdom of God. This translation project was significant not only for making these texts more widely available, but also for how they were interpreted within Renaissance intellectual frameworks. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola further developed Hermetic ideas within his ambitious project of philosophical syncretism. In his Oration on the Dignity of Man, a 900 thesis, Pico attempted to harmonize Hermeticism with Kabbalah, Neoplatonism, and Christian theology, establishing correlations between these diverse traditions. His approach to Hermeticism highlighted its compatibility with Christian revelation rather than treating it as an alternative religious system. This syncretic approach became characteristic of how Renaissance intellectuals engaged with Hermetic texts, as complementary to rather than competitive with Christian doctrine. Giordano Bruno represents one of the most creative and controversial figures in Renaissance Hermeticism. Drawing on Hermetic, Neoplatonic, and magical traditions, Bruno developed a cosmology that departed significantly from prevailing Aristotelian models. His works, such as De la Causa Principio et Uno, on cause, principle, and unity, and Dell'infinito universo et mondi, on the infinite universe and words, advanced a vision of an infinite universe populated by innumerable words. While earlier scholarship, particularly Yeats' interpretation, portrayed Bruno primarily as a Hermetic magician whose cosmology derived directly from Hermetic principles, recent research has revealed a more nuanced picture. Bruno's thought combined multiple intellectual traditions, including atomism, mathematics, and memory arts alongside Hermetic elements. His execution in 1600 resulted from multiple theological controversies, including his rejection of core Christian doctrines rather than specifically from his Hermetic interest. The Swiss physician and alchemist Paracelsus developed a medical and philosophical system that incorporated Hermetic principles while criticizing traditional Galenic medicine. His approach, later termed chemical philosophy, was characterized by direct observation of nature, chemical remedies, and a cosmos animated by spiritual forces. Paracelsian thought, while not explicitly identifying as Hermetic, shared significant affinities with Hermetic principles, particularly in its emphasis on Macrocosm-macrocosm correspondences and the healing power of natural magic. Through Paracelsus and his followers, Hermetic concepts became integrated into early modern natural philosophy and medicine, and influenced developments that would eventually contribute to the scientific revolution. The publication of the Rosicrucian Manifestos, the Fama Fraternitatis in 1614, the Confessio Fraternitatis in 1615, and the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz from 1616 represents a significant moment in the development of Western esotericism. These anonymously published texts announced the existence of a secret brotherhood dedicated to spiritual and scientific reformation, combining Hermetic, alchemical, and Christian themes. themes. Recent scholarship has identified Johann Valentin Andre as the likely author of at least The Chemical Wedding, while the other manifestos may have been collaborative productions within his circles of Lutheran intellectuals in Tübingen. Rather than representing an actual secret society, the Rosicrucian manifestos appear to have been a literary creation, a ludibrium or learned game, intended to promote religious and intellectual reform. Despite their fictional nature, the manifestos sparked what has been called the Rosicrucian furor, inspiring numerous responses and the formation of groups claiming Rosicrucian lineage. Through this cultural phenomenon, Hermetic and alchemical ideas gained wider circulation, influencing figures such as Robert Flood, Michael Mayer, and later esoteric movements. The relationship between Hermeticism and Freemasonry is complex and has often been subject to oversimplification. While Masonic rituals and symbolism do contain elements that resonate with Hermetic themes, direct historical links between ancient Hermeticism and the emergence of speculative Freemasonry in the early 18th century are tenuous. Modern scholarly consensus suggests that Freemasonry developed primarily from medieval stonemasons guilds rather than from Hermetic or esoteric traditions directly. However, as Freemasonry evolved and developed more elaborate higher degrees beyond the basic 3 degrees of entered apprentice, fellowcraft, and master mason, it increasingly incorporated symbolic elements from various Western historic traditions, including Hermeticism, alchemy, and Kabbalah. By the late 18th century, explicitly Hermetic and alchemical symbolism had been integrated into certain Masonic rites, particularly in continental Europe. The Egyptian rite developed by Cagliostro and various Egyptian Masonic systems reflected renewed interest in Egypt as a source of esoteric wisdom, though these constructions owed more to contemporary fantasies about ancient Egypt than to historical Hermeticism. The late 18th century witnessed the development of what Antoine Fevre has termed Illuminist currents, esoteric movements that highlight direct spiritual illumination, often incorporating Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Christian mystical elements. Figures such as Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, Martinet de Pasquali, and Emanuel Swedenborg developed systems that, while not explicitly Hermetic, shared certain affinities with Hermetic thought, particularly regarding correspondences between spiritual and material realms. These Illuminist currents would later influence 19th century occultism and its engagement with Hermetic ideas, and provided conceptual frameworks through which Hermetic texts and principles could be reinterpreted. The French occultist Eliphas Lévy played a crucial role in reviving and reinterpreting Hermetic ideas within 19th century occultism. Through works such as Dogme rituel de la haute magie, Transcendental Magic, Lévy synthesized elements from Hermeticism, Kabbalah, tarot symbolism, and ceremonial magic into a comprehensive magical system. While Lévy's historical claims about ancient magical traditions have been challenged by modern scholarship, his creative reinterpretation of Hermetic principles, particularly his emphasis on the power of will and imagination, significantly influenced subsequent occult movements. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, founded in 1888 by William Wynne Westcott, Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, and William Robert Woodman, represents one of the most influential magical organizations to emerge from the 19th century occult revival. Drawing on Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolism, the Golden Dawn developed an elaborate system of magical initiation and practice that has continued to influence Western historic traditions into the present day. The Golden Dawn's engagement with Hermeticism, however, was mediated through multiple layers of interpretation and combination with other traditions. Their understanding of Hermeticism often reflected 19th century occult synthesis rather than direct engagement with ancient Hermetic texts. The order's magical system incorporated elements from Renaissance magical texts, particularly those of Cornelius Agrippa, alongside Kabbalah, Egyptological findings, and contemporary occult innovations. Aleister Crowley, initially a member of the Golden Dawn, who later developed his own magical system called Thelema or Thelema, continued to work with Hermetic concepts while significantly reinterpreting them. His approach to Hermeticism was highly syncretic, combining elements from various religious and esoteric traditions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, and ceremonial magic. Crowley's most influential work, Liber al vel legis, the Book of the Law from 1904, which he claimed to have received through supernatural dictation, established the foundation for his Thelemic philosophy summarized in the maxim, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." While this system incorporated certain Hermetic principles, particularly regarding magical practice and self-transformation, it represented a significant departure from traditional Hermeticism in both theology and ethics. The 20th century witnessed significant developments in the academic study of Hermeticism, beginning with pioneering work by scholars such as André-Jean Festugière and Arthur d'Herbignac, whose critical edition of French translation of the Corpus Hermeticum established foundations for modern Hermetic studies. Francis Yates' influential works, particularly Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic tradition, brought attention to the role of Hermeticism in Renaissance intellectual history, though many of their specific claims have been revised by subsequent scholarship. More recent academic approaches to Hermeticism, represented by scholars such as Garth Fowden, Brian Copenhaver, Wouter Hanegraaff, and Christian Ball, have situated Hermetic texts more precisely within their historical context and questioned older narratives about Hermeticism's transmission and influence. This scholarship has contributed to a more nuanced understanding of how Hermetic ideas have been interpreted and reinterpreted across different historical periods. Throughout the 20th century, Hermetic ideas continued to influence various esoteric movements and popular spiritual literature. The Kybalion from 1908, published anonymously by the Three Initiates, likely written by William Walker Atkinson, presented a simplified version of supposedly Hermetic principles that has become widely influential in New Age and popular occult circles, despite its minimal connection to historical Hermetic texts. In fact, on whether the Kybalion is or not Hermetic, which is something that I had thought I would make a video on, but then I decided that I wouldn't, just because my friend and colleague Dana Trell on The Modern Hermeticist has made the best video on whether the Kybalion is Hermetic that I could ever possibly make. So I definitely defer to his video if you're interested in having a deep dive into the Kybalion and Hermeticism and whether you could say that the Kybalion is Hermetic. Hermetic concepts have also been integrated into magical systems developed by 20th century occultists such as Franz Bardon, whose works like Initiation into Hermetics present magical training programs framed in Hermetic terms. Similarly, organizations such as the Builders of the Additum, founded by Paul Foster Case, and the Servants of the Light, associated with Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki, have continued to work with Hermetic principles within initiatory frameworks. Contemporary scholarship continues to refine our understanding of historical Hermeticism while also examining how Hermetic concepts function in modern esoteric movements. The establishment of academic chairs and programs focused on Western historicism, particularly at the University of Amsterdam and the École Pratique des Hautes Études in Paris, has further legitimized the academic study of Hermetic traditions and their historical significance. Simultaneously, contemporary esoteric practitioners continue to engage with and reinterpret Hermetic principles, often integrating them with other spiritual traditions, psychological frameworks, and scientific concepts. This ongoing creative engagement with Hermetic ideas demonstrates the tradition's remarkable adaptability across different cultural and historical contexts. The digital age has transformed access to Hermetic texts and communities, with online resources making previously obscure writings widely available and facilitating new forms of esoteric community and practice. Websites, forums, social media groups, and digital archives have created spaces for both scholarly discussion and practitioner engagement with Hermetic traditions, allowing for new interpretations and applications of Hermetic concepts. While earlier scholarship on digital esotericism suggested a fundamental transformation of traditional practices, more recent research indicates that digital technologies have primarily extended adapted and reconfigured existing patterns of esoteric transmission rather than replacing them entirely. Contemporary engagement with Hermeticism often moves fluidly between online and offline contexts, with digital resources supporting rather than supplanting in-person practice and community. So, to conclude, the historical trajectory of Hermeticism demonstrates both remarkable continuity and significant transformation across different cultural and intellectual contexts. From its origins in Greco-Roman Egypt to its contemporary manifestations in academic research and esoteric practice, Hermetic tradition has demonstrated remarkable adaptability while retaining certain core themes, particularly those concerning correspondence between macrocosm and microcosm, the possibility of spiritual transformation through knowledge, and the integration of philosophical and practical approaches to wisdom. Modern scholarship has significantly revised older narratives about Hermeticism's transmission and influence, revealing more complex patterns of interpretation, adaptation, and creative reinterpretation than previously recognized. Rather than representing a single, continuous tradition passed intact through the ages, Hermeticism emerges from contemporary research as a diverse set of texts, concepts, and practices that have been repeatedly rediscovered and reimagined in response to changing historical and cultural circumstances. This more nuanced understanding of Hermeticism's historical development enhances rather than diminishing appreciation of its significance in Western intellectual and spiritual history. By recognizing both the specific historical context in which Hermetic ideas have been articulated and the creative processes through which they have been transformed and adapted, we gain insight into the complex dynamics of esoteric transmission and the enduring human quest for knowledge that transcends conventional boundaries between religion, philosophy, and science. This is it for today's video. If you watched until this point, leave me a spark of light emoji, because that will represent the spark of light of gnosis that makes us ascend. So I hope that you enjoyed this deep dive and overview of Hermeticism. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Besides, leave me the emoji so that I know that you have watched until this point, and you should be proud just as much as I'm proud of you, of your commitment to knowledge. So, and to gnosis, I suppose. So if you like my project of delivering free academic scholarship to the World Wide Web, please consider supporting my work, because it really can only exist thanks to your financial support. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, Ko-fi, PayPal. You find all the links in bio, the info box, a pinned comment in description, literally everywhere. So if you want to find a way to help me, you will have easy access to at least the links to do so. So thank you for considering. It really means a lot to me, even the smallest contributions. And if you're a free member on my Patreon, what are you waiting? Just join, even at the lowest tier, and you will be part of our amazing community. And also check out my services and my website, drangelapuca.com, and sign up for my newsletter, because there's a lot of fun that I don't really share on social media. So please do that. And if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, activate the notification bell so you will never miss a new upload from me, and share my videos around so the symposium can grow. It's really up to you guys. So please share my videos around. There is a free way to support me as well. And thank you so much for being here up until this point. I really hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now. Today we hold the ground, we'll never